The scorching July sun beat down mercilessly on the pristine Willowbrook community pool, its rays dancing across the crystal-clear water like diamonds scattered on blue silk. Children's laughter echoed through the air, mixing with the gentle splash of swimmers and the distant hum of the filtration system. It was supposed to be the perfect summer day, the kind that families would remember fondly years later, captured in sun-faded photographs and cherished memories. Marcus Chen, the 24-year-old pool manager, stood behind the reception desk with a clipboard in hand, methodically checking off the morning's maintenance tasks. His polo shirt bore the embroidered logo of Willowbrook Estates, the upscale AE residential community where he'd worked for the past 3 summers. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to help him through graduate school, and most days were peaceful. Most days. The digital clock on the wall read 11:47 a.m. when she first appeared. Karen Whitfield strode through the pool area's entrance gate with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her designer sunglasses, the kind that cost more than Marcus made in a week, perched imperiously on her nose. She wore a flowing white cover-up over what appeared to be a barely-there bikini, and her perfectly manicured nails clutched an oversized beach bag that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Behind her trailed 2 children, a boy of about 12 with sun-bleached hair and bored expression, and a girl who couldn't have been older than 8, clutching an inflatable unicorn that was nearly as big as she was. The children looked uncomfortable, perhaps sensing the tension that seemed to follow their mother like a storm cloud on an otherwise perfect day. "Excuse me," Karen's voice cut through the ambient pool sounds like a knife through butter. She approached Marcus's desk with the purposeful stride of someone used to getting her way. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge here." Marcus looked up from his clipboard, offering his practiced customer service smile. "Good morning. I'm Marcus, the pool manager. How can I help you today?" Karen's lips pursed into a thin line as if she'd tasted something unpleasant. "Well, Marcus," she said, pronouncing his name with a slight emphasis that somehow made it sound like an insult. "I'm Karen Whitfield, and these are my children, Bradley and Madison. We're visiting my sister who lives in Willowbrook Estates, Unit 247B, and we'd like to use the pool facilities." The request seemed reasonable enough on the surface, but Marcus had been doing this job long enough to sense when trouble was brewing. Something in Karen's tone, the way she held herself, the expectant look in her eyes, it all screamed entitlement. Still, he maintained his professional demeanor. "Of course, Mrs. Whitfield. I'd be happy to help you with that. I'll just need to see some identification and verify your sister's guest policy status. All residents are allowed up to 4 guests at a time, but they do need to be present to accompany their guests." The change in Karen's expression was immediate and dramatic. Her eyebrows shot up over her sunglasses and her mouth opened in what could only be described as scandalized shock. "Excuse me? Are you suggesting that I need permission to use a pool? I am a tax-paying citizen and this is a public facility." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was exactly the kind of misunderstanding that could escalate quickly if not handled properly. "Actually, ma'am, this is a private community pool, exclusively for residents of Willowbrook Estates and their accompanied guests. It's not a public facility. The sign by the entrance clearly states, 'Don't you dare lecture me about signs, young man.'" Karen's voice rose sharply, causing several nearby families to look up from their poolside activities. The children in the shallow end stopped their game of Marco Polo, sensing the tension in the air. "I have been swimming in pools since before you were born, and I know my rights." Marcus glanced around nervously, acutely aware that they were beginning to draw an audience. Mrs. Henderson, a regular who came every Tuesday and Thursday for her water aerobics routine, was pretending to read her romance novel while obviously eavesdropping. The Rodriguez family, who had been teaching their toddler to float, had paused their lesson to watch the unfolding drama. "Mrs. Whitfield, I completely understand your frustration," Marcus said, lowering his voice in hopes that she would follow suit. "If you'd like to call your sister and have her come down to the pool, or if you have written permission from her, I'd be more than happy to let you and your children enjoy the facilities." But Karen was already shaking her head vigorously, her ponytail whipping back and forth like an angry cat's tail. This is absolutely ridiculous. My sister is at work. She's a surgeon, for your information, and I'm not going to bother her during a life-saving operation just because some pool boy is on a power trip. The word pool boy hit Marcus like a slap. He felt heat rise in his cheeks, not just from embarrassment, but from genuine hurt. He was working 2 jobs to pay for his master's degree in environmental engineering, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while managing a team of 6 part-time employees and overseeing a facility that served over 200 families. He was nobody's pool boy. "Ma'am, I'm not trying to make things difficult," Marcus said, his voice tighter now despite his efforts to remain calm. "These are the community rules that all residents agreed to when they signed their homeowners association contracts. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them for everyone's safety and security." Karen let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "Safety and security? From what exactly? Do I look like a threat to you?" She gestured dramatically to herself and her children. "We're obviously a family just trying to enjoy a summer day, and you're treating us like criminals." Little Madison tugged on her mother's cover-up, her voice small and uncertain. "Mommy, maybe we could just go to the public pool instead." Karen's head snapped down toward her daughter with such speed that Marcus worried she might have given herself whiplash. "Madison, honey, Mommy is handling this. We are not going to some dirty, overcrowded public pool when there's a perfectly good pool right here that we have every right to use." But they didn't have every right, and that was the problem. Marcus had dealt with similar situations before, though none quite this dramatic. Usually, when he explained the guest policy, people were understanding, if a bit disappointed. They'd call their resident friend or family member, or they'd make arrangements for another time. But Karen seemed to view the very existence of rules as a personal affront. "Mrs. Whitfield," Marcus tried again, "I really want to help you here. If your sister is Dr. Patricia Whitfield in Unit 247B, I can see that she's current on her HOA dues and has no restrictions on her account. All we need is for her to either come down here, send a text or email giving permission, or for you to have some kind of written authorization from her." Karen's face was growing redder by the minute, and Marcus could practically see steam coming out of her ears. "This is discrimination. Plain and simple. You're singling me out because of how I look, because of my car, because of my clothes. Admit it." The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He prided himself on treating everyone fairly, regardless of their appearance, background, or economic status. The Willowbrook community was diverse, with residents ranging from young families scraping together money for their first homes to wealthy retirees who'd downsized from mansion estates. He'd never, not once in 3 years, made a decision based on someone's appearance. "Ma'am, that's absolutely not true," Marcus said, his voice firm but respectful. "I would ask the same verification from anyone who isn't a resident or an accompanied guest. These same rules apply to everyone regardless of—" "Don't you lie to me!" Karen's voice reached a new octave, causing even more heads to turn. The pool area, which had been filled with the peaceful sounds of summer recreation, was now dominated by her increasingly shrill tone. "I know exactly what this is about. You see a successful woman with nice things, and you automatically assume I don't belong here." Marcus felt trapped. Every word he said seemed to make the situation worse, and Karen's accusations were becoming more outlandish by the minute. He could see other pool patrons starting to look uncomfortable, some gathering their things as if considering leaving rather than dealing with the drama. Bradley, Karen's 12-year-old son, had turned bright red and was staring at the ground, clearly mortified by his mother's behavior. Several kids his age were in the pool area, and Marcus could see them whispering and pointing. The poor kid was going to remember this day for all the wrong reasons. "Mrs. Whitfield," Marcus said, making one final attempt at de-escalation, "I assure you this has nothing to do with discrimination. These policies exist to protect the community and ensure that the facilities aren't overcrowded. If you'd like, I can give you the contact information for the Homeowners Association Board, and you can discuss the guest policy with them directly." But Karen was beyond reason now. She pulled out her phone, the latest iPhone in a case that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly car payment, and began frantically tapping at the screen. "You know what? Fine. Fine, she practically shouted. If you want to treat paying customers like criminals, if you want to ruin a perfectly innocent family's day with your ridiculous power games. 23 minutes later, the distinctive sound of car doors slamming echoed across the pool deck. Officer Jessica Martinez and her partner, Officer David Park, approached the reception area with the measured stride of professionals who had seen every possible variation of human drama during their combined 15 years on the force. What they hadn't expected was to walk into a situation that would challenge everything they thought they knew about community disputes. Karen immediately abandoned her poolside pacing and rushed toward the officers like a moth to a flame, her voice taking on a dramatically different tone, suddenly sweet, vulnerable, and dripping with manufactured distress. "Oh, thank goodness you're here, officers. I am so grateful that there are still people in this world who understand justice." Officer Martinez, a compact woman in her early 30s with observant dark eyes, took in the scene with practiced efficiency. The pool area buzzed with tension. Families had clustered in small groups, some pretending not to watch while others openly stared. Children floated motionless in the water like lily pads, their games forgotten in favor of the real-life drama unfolding before them. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Park," she said calmly. "We received a call about a disturbance. Can you tell us what's happening here?" Karen launched into her tale with the passion of someone who had spent the last 20 minutes perfecting her narrative. "Officers, I am visiting my sister who lives in this community, and I brought my children here for what should have been a lovely day at the pool. Instead, this young man," she pointed dramatically at Marcus, "has been harassing us, discriminating against us, and treating us like criminals simply because of how we look." Marcus felt his stomach clench. During the wait for police arrival, he'd used the time to document everything that had happened, pulling up the community's guest policy on his tablet and gathering his thoughts. But hearing Karen's version of events, so twisted from reality that it was almost unrecognizable, made him feel dizzy. Officer Park, a tall Korean-American man with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked between Karen and Marcus with the patience of someone who understood that truth usually lay somewhere in the middle of conflicting stories. "And sir, what's your side of this?" "Officer, I'm Marcus Chen, the pool manager here," Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Mrs. Whitfield wanted to use the pool facilities, which is completely fine, but our community policy requires that non-resident guests be accompanied by the resident who is sponsoring them or have written permission. I explained this to her and offered several ways to resolve the situation, but she became upset and accused me of discrimination." Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Oh, how convenient. He makes it sound so reasonable, doesn't he? But you didn't see the way he looked at me, the tone he used, the immediate assumption that I didn't belong here." But something unexpected happened next. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who had been pretending to read her romance novel, stood up from her lounge chair with the determination of someone who had finally heard enough. At 73, Dorothy Henderson had lived through enough genuine injustice to recognize manufactured outrage when she saw it. "Excuse me, officers," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been a high school principal for 35 years. "I've been here the entire time, and I feel compelled to tell you that this young man," she gestured toward Marcus, "has been nothing but professional and respectful. He's been managing this pool for 3 years, and I've never seen him treat anyone with anything but courtesy." Karen whirled around to face Mrs. Henderson, her face flushing red. "And who asked for your opinion? This doesn't concern you." But Mrs. Henderson was just getting started. "Actually, it does concern me because I'm a resident here and I pay HOA fees that contribute to this young man's salary, and I'll be damned if I'm going to stand by and watch someone abuse him for doing his job correctly." Other voices began to join in. Maria Rodriguez, who had been teaching her toddler to swim, stepped forward. "I saw everything too. The pool manager was very polite. He explained the rules and even offered to help find solutions." "That's right," added Tom Bradley, a middle-aged accountant who was at the pool with his teenage daughter. "My wife forgot to register me as her guest when I first moved to the community last year, and Marcus handled it the exact same way, professionally and helpfully. No discrimination involved." Karen's eyes darted frantically between the growing chorus of witnesses, her carefully constructed narrative beginning to crumble like a sandcastle at high tide. "You're all ganging up on me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You people stick together." The phrase, "you people," hung in the air like a neon sign, and Officer Martinez's eyebrows rose slightly. In her experience, people who claimed to be victims of discrimination were rarely the ones using divisive language themselves. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. As Karen continued to sputter and protest, a new voice cut through the chaos, clear, authoritative, and completely unexpected. "Karen Elizabeth Whitfield, what in the hell do you think you're doing?" Everyone turned to see a woman in scrubs striding through the pool gate with the focused intensity of someone who had just left a 12-hour shift in an operating room. Dr. Patricia Whitfield was shorter than her sister, with prematurely gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of no-nonsense expression that came from years of making life-and-death decisions. Karen's face went white. "Patty? What are you doing here? I thought you were in surgery." "I was in surgery until 20 minutes ago when my colleague Dr. Kim told me she saw police cars at my community pool and thought she recognized my car." "In the parking lot," Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Imagine my surprise when I called the front desk and learned that my sister was causing a scene and had called the police on the pool staff." The revelation hit the assembled crowd like a thunderbolt. Karen's own sister, the resident she claimed was sponsoring her visit, was clearly not on her side. Officer Martinez stepped forward, sensing an opportunity to get to the truth. "Dr. Whitfield, I presume you're the resident that Mrs. Whitfield mentioned?" "Unfortunately, yes," Patricia replied, not taking her eyes off her sister. "And let me be clear about something. I gave Karen absolutely no permission to use the pool facilities. She called me this morning asking if she could drop by, and I told her I was working a double shift and wouldn't be home until late evening. I specifically told her we could get together tomorrow instead." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But Patty, we're family. Being family doesn't mean you can ignore community rules and embarrass me in front of my neighbors," Patricia snapped. "And it certainly doesn't mean you can abuse the staff and call the police when you don't get your way." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by a surge of vindication. He hadn't been wrong. He hadn't been discriminatory. He had simply been doing his job, but he also felt sorry for Karen's children, who were witnessing their mother's public humiliation with wide, embarrassed eyes. Officer Park had been quietly observing the family dynamic, and something about the interaction struck him as familiar. "Mrs. Whitfield, Karen, have we met before? You seem familiar." Karen's face, which had been cycling through various shades of red and white, suddenly drained of all color. No, I don't think so." But Officer Park was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through something. "Actually, I think we have. Weren't you at the Brookside Mall last month? Something about a return policy dispute at the department store?" The pieces were falling into place with uncomfortable clarity. Officer Martinez remembered now, too. They'd responded to at least 3 calls involving a woman matching Karen's description over the past 6 months. The grocery store incident where she'd accused a teenage cashier of racial profiling when asked to show ID for an alcohol purchase. The restaurant confrontation where she'd demanded to speak to the manager about a supposedly undercooked steak that the kitchen confirmed was prepared exactly as ordered. The library situation where she'd called discrimination when asked to pay overdue fines. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said carefully, "I'm going to need to see some identification." As Karen fumbled for her wallet with shaking hands, her sister, Patricia, looked on with a mixture of disgust and dawning understanding. "Karen, please tell me you haven't been going around the city causing scenes and calling the police every time someone asks you to follow basic rules." The truth was written all over Karen's face. This wasn't her first rodeo. It was a pattern. A systematic approach to getting her way through manufactured outrage and false accusations of discrimination. The realization sent ripples of shock through the crowd of pool-goers, many of whom had initially felt some sympathy for what they thought was a genuine case of unfair treatment. Young Bradley, Karen's 12-year-old son, finally found his voice. "Mom, why did you lie? You told me Aunt." Patricia said we could use the pool. The question hung in the air like an accusation, and Karen's last vestiges of righteous indignation crumbled completely. She had been caught not just in a lie, but in a pattern of lies, witnessed by police officers, her sister,